Welcome to the Songwriter Theory Podcast. I'm your host, Joseph Vidala, and we're going to talk about music theory, lyric writing, creative productivity, inspiration, and more. I'm super excited to have you here, so let's dive into the episode. Hey friend, this podcast, we are finally going to talk about lyrics. And I don't know how I've gone this many podcasts and blogs without talking about lyrics. Because if you know anything about me at all, you know that I call myself a lyrics first guy, which does not necessarily mean that I write the lyrics before I write the music so much as that the way I sort of attack a song is, my first question is, are the lyrics good? And if the answer to that is no, the song is junk and I don't care about the rest. So lyrics first in the sense that if it's not a good lyric, why are we even here? And today we are going to talk about how to write lyrics within your theme because when I was asking different people who I know had tried songwriting at one point, what were some pain points for them and things that they would find helpful, this was something that definitely came up, which is like, all right, so I know what I want to write a song about, but like, how do I write a whole lyric from here? Because I have, the first verse to write, and then I have a chorus, and then I probably have a second verse to write, and then I probably have a bridge to write, and maybe I even change up the lyrics in the chorus, and maybe I have a third verse, and you know what? Maybe I don't use any of those things, and I have 4 minutes worth of lyrics to come up with, or even longer. So, this is going to sort of address how to figure out where to go with your lyrics now that you have your idea of what your song is about. So the first thing is what we'll call the expansion principle. So, obviously this is the idea that we take something small and then we expand from there. And this can take a bunch of different forms. So sometimes, people will just have a basic theme in mind. Like I want to, my girlfriend just broke up with me. I'm sad. I want to write about it. Right? Simple enough. We've all been there. Sure. There's a theme. Sort of. Or if you're like me, you'll often come up with like a symbol that you're like, all right, I like this symbol. And then from there, you either already know what it means, but you want to dive into it deeper, or you're like, this is a really cool symbol. What do I think this means? What does it mean to me? When I see this symbol, what do I think it is a symbol of? And, sometimes it's even a lyric, right? Sometimes you'll start with a lyric that you're like, oh my gosh, I just really love this line. So, for example, on that, I have a song called Won't Be Tonight that I wrote the summer in between my freshman and sophomore year of college. And the whole thing sort of started with, I heard that my grandfather had cancer and he probably had about a year or two left. And I was thinking through how a lot of people will sort of, if something's going wrong in your life, there are a lot of people that are like, oh, it will be better someday. And they always skip to that next step, right? Like, well, someday it will be better. And you just kind of want to shut them up and be like, yeah, but it's not now. You know what I mean? Like, I understand that life moves on and that someday it will be okay. But right now it's not going to be. So the chorus is, the chorus for Won't Be Tonight is, this night seems so long, just waiting to hear it's all a bad dream. Maybe someday it will be all right, but no, it won't be tonight. And that came from that place of like, yes, I understand that someday it will be all right, maybe, but it won't be tonight. And right now, I'm just waiting for this nightmare to be over. And so that lyric and then the whole song that came of that just started with the concept of won't be tonight. That concept of maybe someday it will be all right, but no, it won't be tonight. That line sort of birthed the whole rest of the song. And the song even ended up evolving from that, because I wrote the chorus originally about my grandfather, and then conveniently enough, I don't know if convenient is the right word, but a couple months later, and I just had that chorus, a couple months later, my girlfriend broke up with me, my girlfriend at the time, and it was one of those things. I just cried for it was like 50 hours that I literally did not eat or drink, which I don't know how I went 50 hours without drinking. Like the eating makes some sense to me, but drinking, really? Like how was I not severely sick or something? I don't know. But, and literally all I did for that 50 hours was watch Everybody Loves Raymond and cry. That was all I did. And then at the end of that 50 hours, I'm like, you know what? I'm done with this. If I'm a songwriter, so if I'm going to be this heartbroken, I might as well at least utilize this moment to write a good song. And I sat at the piano, and, half an hour later, an hour later, I had 3 verses and then the alternate chorus that comes at the end of the song. And all of that is from this expansion principle, right? Where I started with this concept of it feels like the world is falling apart around me. I can already imagine people telling me someday it will be okay. So my response is maybe someday it will be all right. But no, tonight it's not going to be. And it started from that concept. And from the lyric that obviously is very, very much that concept. And then it expanded from there. I asked, all right, what are some other events that would make somebody feel that way? And, eventually, obviously, it evolved into it not even being about what I originally came up with that lyric for. And that's okay. It doesn't matter, right? Because the concept was something horrible has happened, not necessarily, my grandfather's dying. It can be anything. And you can do the same thing with the other things I was mentioning, like a symbol or even an image you have in your head that might not be symbolic per se, but just, a feeling that comes from an image that you want to talk about. And something that I really like to do with this is to use Google Images. Now, if you have picked up the free guide that I am always talking about at the end of the podcast, you know this and you've seen this, but I have a whole section there that goes through this process and gives an example of it. Using Lonely Tree, I believe, is the example I give. But it's this idea that, if you have an image or a couple words or something that you kind of want to work off of, or even an emotion, do a Google image search and then copy those images, put it in, a Google Doc or something, or whatever you use for writing. Microsoft Word. I used to use Word. Now I use Google Docs. And just paste those images somewhere. That way you have these images to look at to remind you of the tone of the song and to remind you of of sort of the theme that you're going for. And so the second thing is the opposite of the expansion principle, is the reduction principle. So a lot of times you're going to start with this big picture thing, right? I don't know. Maybe you're like, you know what? Homelessness ticks me off. It makes me sad. Why are there so many homeless? And that's it, right? So you got to figure out a way to, I don't know, tell a specific story within that, or to, it would be pretty hard to write a song just about homelessness and for it to not feel kind of I don't know, just not genuine, I guess. But if you tell a story about, a specific woman that you see on the street, and you as the passerby sort of imagine how she got there, and you then tell her tragic life story or something, Now you have something interesting. Now you have something that people want to hear about. And the key with this reduction principle is to figure out why you care about or why you want to write about whatever theme this is. Right? So say let's go back to a basic example. So say you're like, I want to write a breakup song. Well, why? You know what I mean? Like, not an aggressive why, like, why would you want to do that, you fool? That's not what I'm saying. But like, what is it really you want to address there? Because if you want to write that, you don't want to just write another breakup song like the last 50 million of them, right? So what is it specifically about it? What emotion within it is it that you want to address? Because there's a lot of different emotions with that, right? For example, there could be relief even, or, there's somewhere on the sadness to anger spectrum. Maybe your attitude is, hey, I knew it wasn't going to work out. I knew it wasn't going to work out from the beginning. I knew this was a bad idea, but here I am brokenhearted. I'm such a moron. Or, I knew it was a bad idea from the beginning. I'm such a moron. I should have made it work. There's just so many angles to take within that really basic, boring, if you want to call it that, theme of a breakup song, right? Like a breakup song is just whatever. It's the story you tell within the breakup song that can make it, still great. Because, there's a million breakup songs out there. And, there are a ton that are really great. And then there are a ton that are just junk and nobody cares about them. And obviously your goal is to write something that will resonate with somebody. And more importantly, maybe even resonate with yourself, something you can be proud of. And I think a lot of times people have the problem of getting too big with the theme or trying to be too broad. And the reality is that if you tell a story or if you use images and you get specific, people can insert themselves into that. So, for example, I wrote a song sort of about Alzheimer's and the effect of Alzheimer's. Now, I could write a preachy song about like, hey, the effect of Alzheimer's, family members, you have to be supportive when your, relative with Alzheimer's is starting to go and you can't, but like, there's so many just boring things that you can do with that. Or you can tell the story of a grandson or something with his grandfather, or son with his father, or daughter with her, it doesn't matter, and tell a story about that. So, for example, I knew I wanted to write a song about Alzheimer's for a while, but I just didn't know how to do it. And I knew I wanted to because two of my grandparents passed away sort of different versions of that. So one had a fast-moving dementia, and one had normal Alzheimer's. And, I saw the tragedy of that, of the, forgetting, people that were important to you, forgetting almost yourself, and sort of fading in and out of remembering that. And I can't even imagine, like, the loneliness of that. So I knew I wanted to write a song about that, but it wasn't until I saw a play at a little playhouse in New Hampshire, actually, that I finally had that light bulb of like, okay, now I have the story that I can reduce this giant concept to. And it was a play about Alzheimer's and somebody suffering from it. And I learned something interesting there, especially because the cast, it was a local play, so small, really small, and it was done by kids, and they did a phenomenal job. But they talked about it afterwards, the director and the children that were acting in it, and they addressed that there's sort of this recurring scene that happens that involves a bus stop, where it's not a real bus stop, but like it's basically the old man who has Alzheimer's constantly sits somewhere thinking that it's a bus stop, and he's trying to get on the bus, even though it's not coming because it's not a real bus stop. And that's his way to like escape and try to get back to the family that he once knew. In this case, his wife, I believe. It's been over a year since I saw it, but I believe that's what it was. And apparently it is a real thing that some nursing homes that specialize in Alzheimer's patients have fake bus stops outside, because the people with Alzheimer's will go to that fake bus stop and sit there, because instead of running away now, they're just going to sit there and wait for the bus to come to take them away, so that they can, because they feel trapped. And that fake bench gives a place for them to go so that the workers can go talk to them. Eventually they kind of forget why they were out there, and they can sort of nicely guide them back in. And I thought, bus stop, I have it. And from there, so I have this Alzheimer's concept, and now I've reduced it to a story that the basic gist of it is, at the beginning there is, I think I haven't finished it yet, for the record, but I think it's implied to be like a grandson or a son or something, and his father or grandfather. And at first, which is pretty common, the son is almost arguing with the grandfather of like, no, you're like, this bus stop isn't real, and this bus stop isn't going to take you to all the people who are waiting for you, all the people that you used to know who are waiting for you. But then over time, the son sort of comes to almost play along, because, you know, that is his father or grandfather's reality at that point. And what they recommend you do with Alzheimer's patients is it's very stressful to them to tell them, no, you're wrong. That's not how it is. So you're supposed to sort of, I don't want to say play along. That's not really the right term, but that gets the gist across. So he sort of comes to accept it, and then he says back to his father or grandfather, you know, yes, I'm sure this bus stop is going there, but tell me of this journey and all the ones that you used to know, or all the ones you know. And then the final verse is again the son or grandson. And now bus stop has become an analogy for life, that life is very short, and it's sort of like a bus stop, where you don't stay too long. And so throughout that, bus stop ends up taking multiple meanings, both a literal meaning and a metaphorical meaning, and then another metaphorical meaning. But none of that is important so much as it's the reduction principle, right? I took Alzheimer's, but that's too big of a thing to tackle. It's just too big. But if you tell a story about it, that can be something that people can resonate with, and that can be something that you can be proud of, and you can actually come up with lyrics for, right? Because how do you even start coming up with lyrics for Alzheimer's in general, right? It's just too big of a thing. But now that you have a story of a man and his grandfather, a man and his father with Alzheimer's, who the father goes to the bus stop, a fake bus stop, because he thinks this bus is going to take him to his family members that he does remember, his old friends that he does remember, or rather that, you know, he doesn't remember, but he wants to remember, and he knows they're waiting for him. And that all of a sudden is a compelling story, especially when you kind of find out at the end that basically the whole thing was like the father literally thought that, yes, there's a literal bus that's going to come take me there, but it ends up sort of doubling as a analogy for like they're waiting for him in heaven. And, you know, he will remember their names because he'd be in heaven then. So it becomes this whole deep whatever. And that's what you got to do with the reduction principle. Is you take that big picture thing and reduce it down to a story that people can resonate with. And the last thing here is sometimes just don't worry about the theme. And that may sound silly, but as big as I am on theme, especially with stories, I feel like if you get too hung up on theme with a song, that can trip you up. And I feel like most of the time you don't necessarily want to think about the theme per se. You want to think about where you're coming from, right? So again, for the easy example, in, a love song or a breakup song, you're not really thinking about like, well, what is the theme here? So much as like, somebody just broke up with me, I'm sad, and I'm going to write those emotions. I'm going to convey those emotions and all the things I'm feeling, the frustrations I'm feeling, the sadness, the betrayal, the loss of trust, the utter despair that you feel when you love someone and you know they don't want you anymore. So you're not worried about theme, right? Like you don't need to be worried about like, yeah, but is the theme about how love just never can work out in the end? Like, none of that matters. It just doesn't matter. Just write something from a singular place, and then all the rest will just work out. And, sometimes you'll come up with a theme and the inspiration won't be there right now, which is fine. Like the Alzheimer's thing. It took so long to actually get an experience that allowed me to write what I wanted to write. And that's fine. And even then, there isn't, like, if there is a theme to that song, it's not that I sat and thought like, all right, what theme can I preach? And I think that's the real danger with being so committed to a theme, is if you're committed to a theme, it feels like you're trying to be preachy about something. And in your music, you shouldn't be thinking, all right, how do I preach this message? How do I convince people of this thing? If that's what you're trying to do, maybe you should just readjust. Because we want to move people, for sure, and we want to make people feel things, and we probably do want to sort of adjust their opinion. But about something, like, have a new perspective on Alzheimer's, for example. But at the end of the day, it just needs to be a song that is cohesive and that it's all coming from the same place because it is you singing to us. And we don't want to be preached at. We want to hear your experience. Even if it's not your real experience, we don't necessarily know that. And we don't really care about that. We just want something that feels genuine. And anytime something sounds preachy and sounds like, you're trying to preach this specific theme, we're going to see through that and know that it's not genuine. So don't worry so much about theme. Just make sure that all of it comes from the same place. So in conclusion, the basic things you can do is you can expand if you have something, like a lyric or just a symbol. You can expand from there and figure out, all right, what does this symbol mean? What are other symbols that are sort of like this symbol? What does this lyric mean to me? What sort of stories could come out of this lyric? And the reduction principle, which is like, all right, Alzheimer's, homelessness, big picture things. How do I reduce this? How do I make it into a specific story? How do I make this into something bite-sized enough that I can conquer it with 4 minutes of my song? And then lastly, just don't worry about theme. Just write from a singular place and it can all come together. And it'll be fine and even great, because sometimes if you're worried about theme too much, it's going to come across as preachy. So I hope this was helpful to you. If it was helpful to you, please leave a comment and subscribe. And in your comment, if you're not sure what to say, or if you don't want to say nice things because, I don't know, maybe you hated it or something, please, 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 I would love for you to let me know what it is you would like me to talk about. Because right now I'm sort of making content in the dark with, I see how many listeners we have, and I see that's grown every podcast, and it's super exciting. But I also want to know, what it is you find helpful, what it is you don't find that helpful, what it is I'm not talking about that you would love for me to talk about. Because at the end of the day, I do this, because I enjoy it. This is enjoyable to me. This is my way of having fun. In fact, right now I'm recording this at 1:25 a.m. on a Friday night. That's how much I enjoy doing this. But I really want to help you out. So help me help you. And I can't help you if I don't know what it is you need help with. If you need more in the music theory department, if you specifically are like, all right, what the heck is a chord? Explain triads to me. How do I figure out what key I should sing in? Or arranging, maybe it's arranging that you're like, oh my gosh, nobody out there is talking about arranging. Yes, please tell me more about this arranging thing. Because I recorded my guitar, I recorded my vocal, and then I'm like, now what? I don't know how to make that a huge song that is, what most songs I hear are, right? When there's very few songs out there that's just like a piano and a guy singing, or a guitar and a guy singing. Like, of course those exist, but for the most part there's like layers of guitars, and there's layers of synths, and there's layers of other stuff, and it can seem overwhelming. So anyway, whatever it is, please let me know. Please, please, please let me know. And especially if you picked up my free guide, which I really recommend. Multiple things I talked about today really relate to that. The free guide on 10 ways to start a song. By the way, there's more than 10 ways in there. There's actually 2 bonus ones at the end. I talk about the Google image search thing and give give an example in there with images and sort of the process that I go through. There's really helpful stuff in there. I think you guys will find it super helpful. And if you don't, you can let me know, because then I would like to make something more helpful. So really, 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 please, 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 please let me know what you want me to talk about. And please pick up your free guide, because I think it will be really helpful to you. And if you do, then you'll have my email address, and then you can email me directly and tell me the things that you would like me to talk about. And then I will even more definitely see that, and definitely talk about those things that you want me to talk about. So yes, please leave a review, subscribe, and go pick up that free guide. And I don't think I actually mentioned this at the end of podcasts, so I will say it now. You don't actually have to memorize what it is I say. The link is in the description below. It is the very first part of the description below, and that will be true for all podcasts for the foreseeable future and all of the past podcasts. So be sure to check that out. Thanks for listening to the Songwriter Theory Podcast. Be sure to subscribe and tell a friend. If you want to jumpstart your songwriting, be sure to download my free guide on 10 proven ways to start writing a song at songwritertheory.com/free guide.